guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be doing a comparison between two Revolution eyeshadow palettes that I have already reviewed on my channel. I had a couple of comments on videos just asking me to compare them and wondering which one they should get, so I figured the best thing to do would just be to put them to the test next to each other. I have the Revolution Forever Flawless Ice palette and the Colour Book palette, both palettes that I enjoyed. I gave them good reviews. I have already got the makeup on today because the last time I tried to do a video comparing two palettes, they were not actually comparable and I wasted a lot of time filming intros and then trying to do a look. So I thought I'd do the look first this time, make sure it could actually be done, and then jump into the video. So today it's not a review of the palettes. As I said, I've already reviewed both of them. I will try and remember to link that down in the description box, although that is something that I'm really bad at doing. I'm really forgetful, so I will try and make sure that they are up in the cards as well, but I feel like I forgot to do that on my last video as well, so hopefully they're somewhere, and if you guys want to watch the individual palette reviews, you can. So what I'm going to do today, I'm just going to start by going over the, I guess, the boring details of the palettes, see how they compare price-wise. Then I'm going to show you some swatches with shades that either were identical or came pretty close to each other, and then we'll jump into the eyeshadow look and you can see how they perform compared to each other, so you'll get to see them in action, and I guess then I'll just give you my opinion on which one is best to buy, or if one of them is better than the other at all. So let's just jump in and get into the details of the palettes. So I have touched on the details of the palettes in my individual reviews of each of them, but I just wanted to go over them once again today. So let's start off with the Forever Flawless Ice palette. So obviously this is in the Forever Flawless range. It came out over the summer. It comes in this tin and it's a dupe for the Jeffree Star Blue Blood palette. One thing that this palette does have is a mirror, which the other one doesn't, so if you like having a big mirror to take with you for traveling, this one is a good option. So in terms of the details, this one costs £10, same as the other palettes in the range. You are getting 18 shades and each eyeshadow weighs 1.1 gram. So in total you have got 19.8 grams of shadow in this palette, and that comes in at a cost per gram of 50p per gram. Moving on to the Colour Book palette in the number 5. This is part of the Colour Book range, which came out December, just before Christmas. This one has half shimmers on the top and half matte on the bottom, so there is no mirror because it is foldable. The foldable aspect does mean that it's very compact and very travel friendly, but it doesn't have the mirror. You may or may not care about that, but just something to think of if you do travel. In terms of the cost, this one is slightly more expensive as it is £15, same as the rest of the range, but this time you are getting 48 eyeshadows, which for the size of the palette is pretty good. Each eyeshadow weighs 0.8 grams, so you are getting a little bit less product, but in total you've got 38.4, which means you have almost double the amount of shadow that you did in the Forever Flawless Ice, and the cost per gram is 39p per gram. So just in terms of how affordable the palettes are, this one, though it is more expensive, is far better value for money just because it has so many more shades in it. Now both of these palettes do have a majority of blue tones, but the colour stories are very, very different. So this one is, did I mention it, a dupe for the Jeffree Star Blue Blood, so it follows that colour scheme. So we have a lot of blues, we have some turquoise, but we also have different colours. We've got the nudes, we have a bronze, we have a stark white, and probably one of my favourite shades in here, the silver, is absolutely gorgeous. So there is some variety, it's not just blues. You can do a bit more with this palette. When you look at the Colour Book palette, on the other hand, it's blue and it's green, and that's it. There's no space for any other colour because that's the whole point of this range. If you want your neutrals, if you want your yellows, if you want, you know, any other colours, there are other palettes for that. But we do still have a nice range within the blues. We have those darker ones, we have some more turquoise ones here, and then we have our greens. I mean, we have 48 shades, so you expect variety in there. But if you want any other tones, you're gonna have to reach for another palette. So let's move in to some swatches now to see whether or not the shades match up in both palettes, and whether if you bought both, you would end up doubling up on any shades. So the best way I found to do this was just to sit down with the Ice palette and go through each individual shade to see if I could match it up to one in the colour book palette. Because the shades in this palette have no names, I've gone with the diagram on the back here. I'm assuming that since the palette opens like this, these are shades number 1 through 24, and then down here 25 through 48. But what I will do is put a photo of the palette up somewhere around here so that when I'm saying the number of the shades, you guys know which one I'm referring to. Right, so the first shade in the Ice palette is called Break, and in the colour book palette I've gone for shade number 28. Swatched next to each other, these look practically identical. This one is probably just a bit more intense. The next shade in the Ice palette is called Drench, and then next to it I've got shade number 43. The lighter green shades in the colour book are probably some of my least favourite shades. There's just no pigmentation compared to this one, and this one is just a little bit more blue, I feel, and this one's a bit more green. The next shade in the Ice palette is Icicle, which is a shimmering turquoise. I couldn't really find a dupe for that one. A couple of them came close, but they were either much too green or much too blue. Then next up is Immerse, which is a bronze. Obviously no dupe for that one there, so I'm just going to jump straight into H2O. There's a H2O there, and then I went for shade number 30. I really couldn't find an exact dupe for this one. They are both the deepest blues in each palette, and to be fair, they are completely different when you swatch them on the arm. The next two shades in the Ice palette, again, don't have a dupe because they are Glass and Glacier, a bronze and a silver. So the next one is Freeze. So this is Freeze here, and then I went with number 41. Similar levels of pigmentation. 41 is just a bit lighter, but that was the closest I could come to. The next shade is Arctic, which is easily one of the prettiest shades, and for that one I went with shade number 6. I felt like these were the closer ones, but this is just a much richer blue, and this one is just quite dark. The next shade is Frostbite, so again, no dupe there. So I'm going to move into Melt. Melt is another one that I struggled with. I was hesitating between a couple of different ones, but I settled on, my god, it's dusty. I settled on this one, both incredibly dusty, and actually probably some of the closest shades in this palette. Next up in the Forever Flawless is the shade Cool, so again, there is no dupe. And then we have Ocean, which is a stunning blue. I think these two are pretty close as well. Ocean is just a bit bluer, and then shade number 5. Shade number 5, just a little bit more turquoise, but if you used them on the eye, probably wouldn't know. So next up we have a few shades for which I didn't have dupes. The first one being Titanic, which is the darkest shade in the palette. It's a really deep grey, blue, almost black metallic, and there is nothing like that one in the colour book palette, which is a bit of a shame. It would have been nice to have a really, really dark metallic. Then obviously Icy is not in that palette, but a more surprising one is Crystal. I almost went with 37, but 37 is way more green. There is nothing exactly like it in the colour book. Now into what should be one of the prettiest shades in this palette, but is unfortunately one of the least pigmented ones. It's the shade Iceberg, and for that one I've gone with 42. Not identical, that's as close as they're gonna be. So we do have 8 pairs of shades that kind of match up, but 8 out of a palette of 18 shades and the other of 48 isn't really that much. So if you maybe already have one of the palettes and you were wondering whether it's worth getting the other one, I think it's gonna be okay. You're not gonna have that much overlap between the two, so you can get away with it. Their color stories are different enough that you will be doing different looks. Okay, so that is it for the basic details of the palettes and the shade comparison. So let's just jump into the tutorial, and after that I will give you my final thoughts on both of the palettes. Alright guys, as always my eyes are primed with the P. Louise base so that we can go straight in with the eyeshadow. I came across this look by Chloe Lennon _ makeup, which is inspired by Lucy makeup. So it's just a blue cut crease with a pop of pink on the inside. I know there isn't any pink in these eyeshadow palettes, but I kind of want to add something else, and as this isn't a review, it's just a comparison, I want to go off book a little bit. I do not think that I have enough brushes to do a clean brush on each side of my eye, so I will just wipe these off on my colour switcher. The first colour that I'm going to go into from the Ice palette is going to be H2O up here, which is the darkest blue, and I'm going to pop that into my outer corner and my crease. I've just given that brush a wipe, and on the colour book side I'm going to go in with what is called number 30, I think. Yeah, shade number 30, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I feel like the one on the colour book side is coming out a bit more pigmented. It's not taking as much work. They are not identical though. This one definitely feels more blue, and this one almost has like a purpley tinge to it. I think what is really missing for me in just both of these palettes is a really dark blue, almost black. I think to really deepen this up, I may just go in with a black later on. But it would just be nice if it was a colour that was already in the palette, and especially in the colour book, I just think it would give a bit more variety. Talking about doing your makeup feels weird when you haven't done it in a while. So next, I'm going to go in with Iceberg from the Ice palette and just blend that first shade out. I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying this shade just feels more intense than that first one, and I really feel like that first one should be just so much more intense. But I do sometimes find that this one can go on a bit patchy. Although once it's built up, I do like the way it looks, but I just find that it needs a bit of work. So on the colour book side, I'm going to go in with 42. Again, I've just wiped that brush off, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Now that I'm getting this shade on, this one definitely is not as intense as Iceberg, even though Iceberg took a lot of building up. So even though there's a wider variety of shades in the colour book, I feel like there's not as much intense, rich shades almost. Not in the darker blues anyway. They don't really have the same depth, but they are still lovely. Problem I do have with the colour book palette is just remembering which shade I've used. There's just so many, I almost always go back and dip in the wrong one. Okay, I'm now going to finish blending everything out with the shade Freeze. And then I'm going to go back into a little bit of Iceberg to blend them out. I do think they blend out beautifully together. That gradient is gorgeous. So again, I've wiped my brush and I've already forgotten which one it was. Number 41. This is a lot easier to keep up with, and they have names that are on the box, or even if the numbers were on the box. This, having to turn it around every time, don't like it. I don't want to see you finally see you looking down and out. Coming to me crying, saying you miss having me around. Gave you chances and you blew it. You so easily influenced all the time. So now that we've got all three colours on, I would say that that lightest one is definitely the one where they're most similar. I feel like this eye, using the Ice palette, definitely has like a bit more depth. I can see that gradient a bit more, whereas I don't as much with this one. I think there's just a bit more similarity between those two shades, and it just feels a little bit more muted. But saying that, I feel like the darker shade on this eye maybe feels like a little bit patchy, which this one doesn't. I'm just going to go back into that first shade in each one to re-intensify it, and I'm just going to bring it inside as well. Make sure I've coated the outer corner. You can just see immediately as I've done that with both shades how much more pigmented the darker shade in the colour book palette is. Interesting. Right, I do want to intensify things a bit more on each side. I want it to be really dark in that crease. So I'm just going to jump into my Viseart Neutral Mattes palette, and I'm going to take a little bit of the black on a Sigma E36 and just try and deepen it up on both sides. I'm just going to help blend it out with the Zoeva brush again. And again, I'm just going to go in with the darkest shade from each palette just to help blend that out. I would have preferred to start with the black, but I wanted to see how dark we could get it with the shades from the palettes in the first place. Right, that's a lot closer to what I wanted, so I am going to go away, quickly cut my crease, and we're going to come back to add a little bit of shimmer. Alright, so I've now cut my crease, so in the centre of the lid it looks like a really glittery blue. I'm just going to use the darkest shimmer metallic, the metallic really, isn't it? I'm going to use the darkest metallic that we have in this palette, which is the shade Arctic. Now I do find this shade a little bit difficult to pick up, but I'm going to pop that on the center of the lid, and once you have managed to pick it up, it is very pretty. I haven't sprayed my brush or anything. I'm digging really hard, to be fair. That is a beautiful metallic. Now on the outer corner, I mean, looking at this, it does just feel really patchy and not dark enough, so I'm going to pick up some more of H2O and see if I can blend them in together. Yeah, it's not dark enough, this shade. It's just not intense enough. I really wish that shade was just richer and more pigmented. So on the colour book side, I really struggled to decide between 6 and 12 for which shade was the most similar. I think I'm going to go in for number 6 up here. And again, with these darker metallics, I do really find that I have to dig in this palette as well. Let's see. It does come out nice on the eye after a lot of digging again, but I prefer Arctic. It's just a lot more striking. It's a very deep, rich blue colour, and in comparison this one just kind of almost seems a bit dull. But saying that, I do feel like it's going to blend in a lot better on this side. There's not really a difference of colour in between the darkest matte and the darkest shimmer in the same way as we have got that here. Just also going to make sure it's nicely blended into the P. Louise base. I don't really want a harsh edge, because the next thing that we're going in with is a pigment, just softening it up. To finish off the cut crease, I'm just going to go in with Fantasy from Peaches and Cream, which is a stunning pink. It looks white in the pot, but you can see it's got a pink reflex, and this is actually the pigment that was used in the original look, and it is really pretty. So let's find a brush, and I'm going to tap that in. And I'm going to bring it over the shimmering blue to really blend them in together. And then back in with the brush I used with the blue as well. It's just such a lovely pigment. They come in tiny jars, so I'm always really scared to use them all up. I'm just going to use the same colours on the lower lash line now, going from darkest to lightest. So this time I am actually going to start with the black, get that right up in my lash line, and then go in with the lighter shades. I said at the beginning that I felt like this side was a bit more intense because there's more of a difference between the shades. I actually almost feel like it's this one now that we've got the cut crease on, just because of where there's less of a difference between the darkest blue here and the metallic compared to, what are the shade names? Compared to H2O and Arctic. I feel like the fact that H2O isn't quite as intense as Arctic almost takes away from it. In the waterline it looks like they've used some sort of purple, so I'm going to go in with my LA Girl Shockwave Neon Eyeliner in the shade Vivid, just on my waterline. Man, this isn't very vivid, is it? This isn't my favourite of these eyeliners. I feel like I've had more success with the other ones so far. One last thing that I want to do before finishing off the rest of the makeup is to highlight my inner corner, and for that, in the Ice palette, I'm going to take the shade Cool. I'm just going to take that on a pencil brush and get that into my inner corner. It is dusty, I will say that. And then because there isn't a shade similar to that in the Colour Book palette, I'm just going to go in with my Revolution highlighter in Set the Tone on the other eye and just do the exact same thing. I mean, I can't really tell the difference. That's it for the eyes now, so I am gonna go and add some liner, some lashes, finish off the rest of my face, and then I'm gonna come back and give you my final thoughts on these two palettes and which one you should go for. Also, before doing that, actually, I feel like I want to mention fallout. I feel like I have no fallout on this side at all, but I've had a bit of fallout on this side from the darker shades, so if you go for the ice palette, don't do your foundation first. It's not worth it. Alright, so time for my final thoughts on the palettes. I don't really feel like I necessarily prefer one of the palettes over the other, even though both of them have a lot of blue. As we've seen, the colour schemes are different and they do different things. Strictly from a price perspective, the Colour Book is the better value for money. I'd say they're pretty much exactly the same quality. I think which one you go for rather than the cost is just going to fall on what you actually want from the palettes. So if you want blues and greens, just go for this one. This is going to give you pretty much everything you need, even though there are a couple of things missing. Overall, you're going to have most of what you need in terms of greens and blues. If you're not interested in the greens, I would go for this one instead. It has those nudes, it has that white. I mean, I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but it does have a bit more variety. Like I said, you could take this one traveling with you because it's got the big mirror, and if on one day you want to use the bronze and some nudes, you can do that, and if you want to do blue the next day, you can do that as well. Even though this one is better value for money, I wouldn't base my decision solely on that. I would just look at what you want to add to your collection. Is it blues and greens? Is it just blues? That really would be what would sway me. And if you already have one and you want to know if you can get away with the other, none of us need both. I know I definitely don't, but I kind of like having both. They just do slightly different things for me, and I'm just going to reach for them at slightly different times. Anyway guys, that is it for today's video. I hope you found it helpful. I hope it has helped to sway you in your decision making between these two palettes. If you were hesitating, I hope it's just shed a bit of light on the two of them. And if you want more information about either of them, hopefully I would have remembered to link both of my reviews somewhere so that you can check them out and find out a bit more. As always, if you enjoyed the video, then do please give it a big thumbs up, leave me a comment letting me know what you thought of it, and of course subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next video, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye guys!
Yeah. Unknown Brain. Marvin Divine.